South African entity participation from these projects is 51%, with black ownership at 41%. About 3,800 jobs opportunity will be created during the 18 months construction period and further 13,500 during the 20-year power purchase agreement term. The preferred bidders are required to reach financial close by no later than end of July 2021. Due to the urgency to bring power online, this date is not negotiable. It is for preferred bidders to manage all the risks to reach the financial close. It is envisaged that first power from these projects will be connected to the grid from August 2022. Now, in September 2020, National Energy Regulator of South Africa concurred with Section 34 determination to procure 11,813 megawatts from a range of technologies. These included wind 4,800 megawatts, solar PV 2,000 megawatts, coal 1,500 megawatts, gas 3,000 megawatts, battery storage 513 megawatts. I am pleased to announce the first bidding round in response to Section 34 determination. The request for proposal for procurement of 2,600 megawatts under Renewable Energy IPP procurement program bid window 5 will be released to the market midnight today. Now, many people have been complaining that where's bid window 5? It will be released to the market midnight today. Of the 2,600 megawatts from wind bid window 5, 1,600 megawatts will be from wind and 1,000 will be from solar PV. Given the energy challenge that we are facing, the objective is to get these projects connected to the grid as soon as possible. The closing date for bid submission is August 4th, 2021. Now, we intend to release 4 more requests for proposals within the next 12 months. These will include 2,600 megawatts from renewable energy, 3,000 megawatts from gas, 1,500 megawatts from coal, and 513 megawatts from battery storage. In line with the IRP and the Provincial of Electricity Regulation of new generation capacity, additional determination will be issued to ESCOM and municipalities as and when requests are received. The department is working with necessary speed to review the licensing threshold for increased embedded generation. I must emphasize that the President announced that threshold will be increased from 1 megawatt to 10 megawatts. But it is important to also note that for people who want to do self-generation for own use, you don't need a license. And there is no limit. What triggers a license requirement is connection to the grid and trading with your surplus energy capacity. So, people must remember that if you want to generate electricity for own use, you don't need a license and there's no limit. You want to have a big power station of 1,000 megawatts for self-generation, you don't need a license. But if you want to connect to the grid and you want to trade with surplus energy, you need a license. Let me conclude that the energy generation landscape of our country is evolving concerted effort to ensure that IPP procurement program steam ahead to deliver secure energy supply from diverse range of energy sources in line with Integrated Resource Plan 2019 is at the core of our work. Collectively, our interventions give effect to the fourth priority intervention of the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, that is, to rapidly expand our country's energy generation capacity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we will now go into Q&A, and as I said earlier on, we will start with the journalists who are in the room. And may I please see a show of hands, starting from my left-hand side of the room. 1, 2, okay, 3 to the right, 4th. Okay, can we go in that order, please? Please introduce yourself as well.
Minister, could you perhaps give us of these 8 winning bidders?
Please talk to the mic so that we hear you.
Sorry, is it better? It's Antoinette Slowett from Rapport. Could you perhaps give us from these 8 bidders the capacity and the technology of each? And then I'm not very clear about the other 3 bidders. What is happening with them? And do these deadlines that you quoted apply to them as well?
Okay, can we go to the next person?
Hi, Minister. It's Gwede Mantashe from ENTA. I just wanted to get clarity on whether any of the successful bidders are taking part in a hybrid project where 2 or more of them are working on the same project, which is allowed. And then, Minister, are you sure that these successful bidders are not connected to influential politicians and that none of them got the bids through their connections?
Looks like for the first time I'd say government has covered this person.
You're covered, okay. The next gentleman.
Good. Hi, Minister. Gerard Pretoria is also from ENTA. Just on the current situation of Eskom and power supply, obviously load shedding is a problem, and like you have mentioned, there has to be that's a big driver behind the economy. How worried are you about the situation, given that there was also a briefing earlier this week that it was admitted that there were problems in terms of maintenance and that they could not do it properly in the past, and hopefully that will happen right now. Given how worried are you about that? Thank you.
Okay, the Minister is supported, as we said earlier on, by the DG, Advocate Mokoena, DDG Jacob Mbele, and Mr. Bernard Magoro at the far end. The Minister will decide how we approach this. You want to speak from there? You have to come to the podium.
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll start with the first question that was from Antoinette about the capacity and the technologies. We have 3 projects that are gas-based, LNG, and that totals about 1,220 megawatts. 2 projects are a combination of solar PV and battery storage, totaling about 225 megawatts. 2 projects are a combination of solar PV, wind, and battery storage, totaling about 203 megawatts. And then we've got 1 project that is a combination of LNG and solar PV, and that's at 197 megawatts. The second question was about the 3 eligible bids. The process as defined in the RFP was that we will do benchmarking. And one of the outcome of the benchmarking exercise is that we go through what we call the value for money assessment. So we analyze the key components, the funding models, to determine if we are getting value for money. So the outcome of that process is that these 3 bids, we picked up that the numbers do require some negotiations around the costing for the key equipment, mainly, and that is the exercise that we'll be going through after this announcement. Then a follow-up to that was about the deadline for these 3 bids. We don't know at this stage. We're not sure how long it will take to finalize these value for money discussions. As you may be aware, these projects, require a lot of assessment, and funding has to be reevaluated, and there are a lot of approvals that are required. So we don't know how long this process will take, but we would like to conclude as soon as possible. And thereafter, we'll then make another announcement. And obviously, the deadline for financial close and the capacity coming online will also be dependent on when we finalize that process. The other question that I can also respond to is around the hybrid nature of the bids. As I've indicated, we've got basically 4 different combinations. One is the pure LNG projects. The 2 is a combination of PV and battery storage. And then we also have a combination of PV, wind, and battery storage. And then lastly, we've got a combination of gas, LNG as well, and PV. I'm not sure if I missed any other questions, technical questions. Thank you, Minister.
Are these successful bids not connected to influential politicians? And did this politician influence the outcome? I'm sure Ndelmagoro should have responded to that, because we're not assessing the bids. But let me give you a rumor that was flying around by lobbyists, which I think this question referred to. In one of the bidders, among the directors, there was a person called Thabo Mokoena. And then they said, yeah, there you are. The Director General of the department is there. And we said, go and check carefully. And they discovered that it's some different Thabo Mokoena with another name, not the Director General of the department. So there's no way that the Director General of the department is influenced. One lobbyist said, yeah, in some of these, son of the minister is involved. And we said, go and investigate and find out, because you will not find a son of a minister in any of these bidders. So all I'm saying, I want to caution the media that rumor mongering and facts are 2 different issues. It's not the same. When people follow rumor mongering, they will make all the allegations. Here are the bidders. They bid for something that was advertised, and they were tested and evaluated, and therefore let's not look for excuses. How worried are we about the electricity situation? If we generate 2,000 megawatts, for example, that is about the size of an ordinary coal-directed power station. If you add energy that comes from bid window 4, and you add other small classes of energy that is coming to the stream, you'll discover that we're actually delivering a size of 2 power stations already. That is not correcting what is happening in ESCOM. It is supplementing the electricity supply as required. And what we do is that we must supplement the energy from ESCOM and not say we'll wait until ESCOM is perfect, generate more energy. So if you add megawatts, you will see that we're almost supplying 2 power stations of energy already, and we're going to grow that capacity. When we we complete the 11,813 program, we will have delivered almost 6 power stations, if you look at the average power station on coal-generated power, as a supplement outside of ESCOM. So we are concerned about the situation. That's why we think this program is urgent.
Thank you, Minister. Takalani, do you have any questions that have been submitted?
Thank you. I do have a few questions here from online platform. And the first 2 questions were asked by Terence King from Engineering News. And the first question is, will the procurement documentation for bid window 5 be similarly to that used for bid window 4, or have any material changes been made to the evaluation criteria? And the question number 2 from Terence is, could you please provide an update on the progress you are making to streamline the regulatory processes for large electricity consumers to build and or procure their own electricity and to wheel that electricity across the network? And is there envisaged license exemption threshold now definitely for 10 megawatts rather than the 50 megawatts proposed by some commentators and endorsed by ESCOM? And we have a clarity seeking question from Ed Stollard from Business Maverick. Is asking for clarification on what the minister has said about licensing, if whether it is required to supply to the grid but not for self-generation. Thanks.
Okay. So we only have 3 questions. Yeah, but Minister's Peled.
Regarding bid window 5, that was a question from Terence Creamer around what are the changes. We try to align very much with the risk mitigation procurement program, which was obviously an improvement from the previous programs. But the major changes are in the ED requirements. We have, for the first time, introduced black women participation with a target of 10%. We have also introduced skills development as another element in the ED component of the procurement program. And that is also complemented with management control, where we are specifically requiring certain black women involvement in the running of these businesses. The other change is around trying to put the requirements more on the bidders to streamline the requirements, so that instead of us having to go through a rigorous process of evaluation, they provide to us, the onus is now on the bidders to provide confirmation that they comply with certain requirements. This will help us to streamline the evaluation process. And as I mentioned earlier, benchmarking is now one of the cornerstone of the program. because of the lessons we've had in the past and the fact that the market has matured. So we will be conducting benchmarking process going forward in all the programs. So this will be another feature in the bid window 5 as part again of extracting more value for the consumer as we procure. And then the other issue is around the decommissioning of the facilities at the end of the PPA. So there is a clear requirement now for decommissioning trusts, which will be monitored by the department, so that at the end of the PPA term, there is a resource made available to decommission the facilities. Thanks, Minister.
Thank you. Ben.
Thanks, Minister. I will respond to the question by Ed around clarity around the licensing. Let me first just start by clarifying that the licensing is licensing for operating a facility. So it's not for constructing a facility. And as things stand, there is no requirement to hold a license for operating a facility that is not connected to the grid, regardless of size. What the Minister was clarifying is that if the facility is connected to the grid, there is a requirement to hold a license to operate that facility because it will have an impact on the grid. I think I've clarified that, Minister. Maybe I should leave the other one to you, the last one.
Let me tell you. Thank you very much. The question that is the threshold, 10 megawatts versus 50 megawatts as raised by ESCOM. The President in the SONA announced that we'll amend regulations to increase the threshold from 1 megawatt to 10 megawatts. That is what we're going to do. That is for registration and no license. That's what we're going to do. The 50 megawatts wanted by ESCOM, we've asked ESCOM to play in their lane. Because if they run all over the lanes, they're going to disorganize the racing model. They must not want more megawatts to be unlicensed. They must focus on getting ESCOM to work. That is the responsibility of ESCOM management. They must not try to go all over and ask 50 megawatts and that 100 megawatts there. It's not their business. We've been asked to increase the threshold from 1 megawatt to 10 megawatts. We will do that. Now, if they want 50 megawatts because they can't get ESCOM right, we think that they are misplacing their responsibility on policy formulation. Thank you very much.
Okay. Shall we take a last round, Minister?
Huh?
Shall we take a last round?
The last word?
Last round of questions.
Mm.
1, 2, 3, 4. Can I, before you speak, Antoinette, can I just check with Takalani? Takalani, have you received any other questions?
Yes, thank you. We've received,
Okay, you will read them as soon as the 4 in the room have completed, then we can be done. Okay, start please.
Minister, there's a lot of criticism about the IRP being outdated and the assumptions not being correct anymore. When will the IRP be updated? And then about the new coal that you spoke about, there are questions about the ability to finance that, because many finance houses have said that they won't finance coal in new coal projects. Do you think it is realistic to still ask for proposals for coal? And then the 2,000 megawatt risk mitigation, shouldn't it have been more? Eskom talks about a shortage of 4,000 megawatt. And then the last question, there was also a lot of criticism about this program moving very slowly. Do you believe that was justified, and do you have the right capacity in the department and in the IPP office, enough capacity to run this program at the pace that the country needs it?
Thank you.
Thank you. It's Govan again. Minister, as the DMRE Minister, I'm sure you saw the Eskom State of the System Plan. Wanted to get your official comment on what you thought of that presentation and their assessment of what's going to be happening with Eskom. On the 4,000 megawatt shortfall over 4 years that was announced, do you as the Minister believe that there's anything they can do to lower that in the interim? And then lastly, we've got the Eskom CEO who's facing an investigation, an independent investigation. The National Union of Mine Workers, the majority union at Eskom, has released a statement that's very critical following the announcement of retrenchments. I wanted to know what do you think about what's happening with the management at Eskom and the relationship with Labour at the moment, and how that impacts on your plan to secure energy?
Thank you, Minister. Minister, just on the car power ships, 3 of them there I see out of the 8 companies are the ones that are preferred bidders. Have you perhaps discussed in detail the environmental impact thereof? And have you also been, I know there's been criticism out there about the exemptions literally favoring car power ships, but not really giving other bidders an opportunity, a level play opportunity to ensure that they are preferred. Would you respond to that? And a last one from me, in the economic reconstruction and recovery plan, the President announced that there will be an export that will be imposed on the, a tax that will be imposed on the export of raw ore. And nothing has ever really been communicated since then. Tell us, that's for Chrome. So yeah, tell us if you're going to be implementing any of that, because smelters in your country continue to close on a daily basis, while others like China are increasing their laborers, meaning jobs are lost in South Africa but elsewhere are being gained. Thank you.
Okay, Declan.
No, thank you. We have a question two questions from Ms. Roberts from Media 24. And the first one is, can you explain how you can achieve 50% of local content during the construction phase when there are 3 car power ships that are imported as it is? And the second question is car power also a 20-year PPA? That will be the longest PPA car power currently has. And with Terence Creamer again, with 2 questions. The first one is for BW5. Has the local content threshold been changed? And the last question is, could you confirm the RFP release schedule for BW6, 7, 8, etc., as well as gas, coal, and batteries?
Okay. Right. That's the end of them.
IRP being outdated. That is a typical comment of South Africans. We are a noisy nation. We think that we should be developing policy on an ongoing basis and never have chance to implement what is in place. that comment of IRP being outdated when it was approved in 2019. By 2021, beginning of 2021, it is outdated, we must revisit this. It's typical of this complaint that I hate. We have good policies, but we don't implement. What we never look at is that we want to be in a perpetual debate and discussion and not give ourselves space to execute. Let's execute what is in place, and when there's shortcomings, we come back and review the RP. But to say before, when we're at the beginning of execution, we're already told it is outdated, is a typical South African attitude to execution and policy formulation. Financing nuclear. You know, one thing that is interesting in this department is that, come again? Or not nuclear. Okay, come again.
New coal power stations.
Now, every technology, there is a process here. We always issue requests for information, we issue Section 34 managerial determination, and we issue requests for proposals. So anybody want to write off any technology is putting the cart before the horse, because those processes do test the market and the appetite of the market for those technologies. So even with nuclear, I would give you the same answer. So that is the answer. With request for proposal, request for information, all those processes are intended to test the market and test the appetite on any technology. And therefore, let's allow those processes determine if there's appetite for that technology. The 2000, should it not be more? It may be, but in terms of the IRP, that is what we require. And we're executing a plan that is in place, not what we desire or what people think is the desired, but we have a plan, it is approved, we're implementing it, we're almost at the early stages of that execution. I want to appeal for us to be given a chance to execute. Is the program going very slow? I don't know slowness. Slowness and fastness are always relative terms. Because when you say it is slow, compared to what? When it is fast, fast compared to what? We are implementing the plan as fast as we can, and actually look back over the last number of years and see whether the progress we're making has been made in how many years behind us. Now, if you don't do that comparative study, you can use slow and you can use fast. But the reality of the matter is that our reading of the situation is that we're moving faster than any time in recent years. And we are not doing it because we're comparing with those years. We're doing it because there is pressure on us to deliver on these needs. And we'll continue delivering in terms of that pressure. ESCOM talking of a 4,000 shortfall, you know, you will have noticed that we said we'll look into application by ESCOM and municipalities as they arrive. Okay. So the ESCOM, if we think that there is a 4,000 megawatt shortfall, it must apply. We'll give them the license to actually generate additional energy from whatever technology. So it can be a complaint by ESCOM that there is a 4,000 megawatt shortfall and stop there without having any plan to do anything about that 4,000 megawatt shortfall. If it does that, it is not a quantification of a shortfall. except that a loud cry for somebody else to take the responsibility instead of ESCOM as the monopoly energy supply entity in South Africa to take its responsibility serious. Now, on the rest of other questions about ESCOM, I think I should not venture into the ESCOM space because that falls under Minister Kotan, and allow him to deal with those issues, whether it is ESCOM facing investigation or a retrenchment and all those, I leave them there. I'm not in that space. Let me leave the environmental impact exemption. Okay. Tax on export of raw ore. Are we exporting jobs or what is happening? You see, the ease of doing business in a country means, among the other factors, cost of doing that business. You can impose your tax on export of raw ore, but if the cost of that tax is less than the cost of electricity in processing ore, mineral ore, anyway, business people will export that ore commodities to other countries where they can do and beneficiate it at less cost. Our challenge as a department, including DPE, is to deal with the price of electricity and the impact of that price of electricity on value addition and industrialization in general. That debate is urgent and is necessary. And the year gave 50% on carports and local corn and gas, coal and batteries. Let me leave it for technical people. I'm not a technical person. It is always important to acknowledge your shortcoming.
Minister will deal with, I think you adequately dealt with the question around the IRP, which by default, I mean, all long-term plans, because they are based on long-term projections, the assumptions around those plans tend to be updated the day you actually promulgate the plan. So it's not about the accuracy of the plan, but it's about the flexibility in implementing the plan. I think that's one of the key important things. The second one is that I think for those that have read the IRP, you'll realize that the IRP does indicate that the energy mix between now and 2010 does not change significantly, right? If you project higher demand, or you even do a sensitivity on ESCOM plant worsening off. So the energy mix requires a lot more renewables, but supported with the necessary gas and storage. And because of the timing, you may have to consider some other baseload technologies. And then the other question that I would like to touch on is the one around the capacity in the department and the IPP office to deliver on the program. I think this question is probably emanating from maybe the lack of appreciation of the work that goes on behind the scenes. There are a number of players to getting a program like the one that we announced today to fruition. And those players include other government departments and ESCOM. A lot of the time, for example, in the risk mitigation program, I think we spent about 6 months just discussing the risk allocation, because we all appreciate where ESCOM is today. But even discussing the technical requirements, because the technical requirements in the RMIPP is what the system operator, which is ESCOM, specified. And we had to balance that with the ability to bank the program. So those are the extensive discussions that happen behind the scenes that do not obviously play out in the public domain. And without that, you don't have a bankable program. So I think it's not an issue of capacity. It's an issue of the work that has to happen behind the scenes that does not happen in the public domain. And the last question I'm going to respond to, it's the one around the timelines. I think the minister did already in his address indicate that we will in the next 12 months issue a number of bids. The one that I can confirm that we've confirmed on a number of occasions is that we are looking at bid window 6 around August. But again, one must take into account all these things that I've mentioned, that Eskom is proposed to be the buyer. So the process and the timing will depend on all those processes being finalized. I will leave it at that for the current round. Thanks.
I'm going to touch on the question regarding the specific bidder. But before I do that, I just want to add on what Jacob was talking about. You will recall that initially we wanted to release this RFP, sorry, to receive the bids on the 24th of November 2020. It was the market that asked that we extend that timeline. In fact, we had request to extend the timelines going as far as March 2021. So the delay is not necessarily because of the department and government, but it's also because of the complexity of the program. So I thought I should add that first. Regarding the specific bidder and the outcome, it's important to emphasize here the program was technology agnostic. The evaluation process was undertaken by a team of independent transaction advisors, and we do conflict checks with all of them who are involved. Their names were published in the IPP website. The requirements are exactly the same for all the bidders. Environmental impact assessments, whatever was required for bidder A was exactly the same thing that was required for the next bidder. So I just want to make it clear that all bidders were treated exactly the same. So those that passed the Part B evaluation stage, where we look at some of these requirements like environmental issues, they all met exactly the same requirements. Then there was a question around local content, the exemption on local content. The department is not involved in the exemption process for local content. This is within the mandate of the DTIC. We evaluate based on what the bidders produce to us. If they've got an exemption, there is a process to follow in the evaluation, taking cognizance of that exemption. And lastly, the PPA is exactly the same for all the bidders. I think I've covered the questions relating to a specific bidder. Then the last question was around local content for bid window 5. Obviously, the details will be released with the RFP. But suffice to mention that we have looked at and we have engaged with DTIC, we have engaged with suppliers, we have engaged with potential bidders through the associations, we have engaged with the manufacturers that we could engage with, some of the EPC contractors were involved. So in setting that target, we had to look at what is the current capacity in the country and what is the potential capacity that will be there by the time these projects go into construction. It hasn't been an easy process, as you can imagine, because in the last 5 years we have lost a lot of capacity, manufacturing capacity locally, which we all would want that to be regenerated in support of the program. which is why this time we've decided to issue a rollout plan that covers much longer period, so that there is certainty in terms of what the market for this equipment look like going forward. So without mentioning the number itself, but yes, we believe we have reached a reasonable number that is acceptable to government and also to the market. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and to the team. As we close, I would just like to say a couple of journalists have sent in messages. Takalani, is that a question?
Yes, there's a question which I believe will be the last. It's one from Media 24. It's saying, can the minister please confirm whether the power ships will be part of the 2,000 megawatt procurement? Thanks.
I think the list of the 8 successful bidders was read out, and the car power ships, as far as I remember, were counted there. The statement will clearly inform the inquirer as to who the 8 are fully. So can we please leave it at that? And then I just wanted to say that there were a couple of journalists who had sent messages saying that the links were not working as well as they should. We would encourage them to submit whatever questions that they have in writing, and they will be dealt with. We also invite those who would like to do interviews to please approach Johannes and Soli, as well as Nachi, on behalf of the Minister with regards to the one-on-one interviews. Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you, DDGs, Mr. Magoro, and all the journalists who are here with us and those who are watching from their offices. Thank you. We're closed.
Thank you.